This is Ray Varner, class of 2010, in Fairfax, Virginia, at the home of Noanie Sullivan, class of 76. We're here with the Living Legacies Oral History Program, in particular the Women of Randolph-Macon Oral History Program. And today is August 10th, 2011. Hello, Noanie.
Thank you for coming, Ray. Great project.
Oh, thanks. So where did you grow up?
Charlottesville, Virginia.
Okay, so were you there for until the time that...
My parents moved there when I was 2 months old, so I grew up there.
How did you hear about the college being in Charlottesville?
I don't remember how I actually heard about it. I believe that my mother suggested it. When I was in high school, a senior in high school, you basically looked at 3 or 4 colleges and decided what you wanted to do. So at that time, Randolph-Macon was 3rd in the state academically, and I believe William and Mary and W&L were just above it in the rankings. So it was a good school. I looked at Virginia Tech, and could have basically gone there, was accepted there, and could have gone there for about $100 a year. And so Randolph-Macon's package was more like, when I graduated from college in '76, I think I had about $2,300 in student loans. So their package was very good too. I went down and looked at William and Mary, but did not apply. I'm not a fan of the Tidewater area, so I applied to UVA. So we went around. I saw Virginia Tech in the winter. Maybe that was a mistake, but it seemed like a long way away. And 3 to a room, and then my next visit was William and Mary, and as I said, I'm just not a fan of the Tidewater area. So then when I went to Randolph-Macon, I think I really fell in love with the campus. It was small. The fountain was a big draw. It was a big draw, and the idea that it was 5 minutes to class and that kind of thing. So I applied there and they accepted me.
So did the fact, I guess you knew that the college had gone co-ed just the year before, right?
Well, actually, I don't think I was really aware of it, nor do I have any memory of thinking about what that meant. I don't think I was altogether that aware of it early on when I went. There were some experiences that brought it front and center in my face, but it didn't play into the decision at all. It was all about where can I get the best education, because I was paying for it myself, and I didn't want to be too far from home. So I'm not sure I knew that it had just converted to a co-ed institution.
Do you remember, can you tell us about arriving on campus as a freshman?
Well, I have to be honest. In high school, I did very well academically, top 12% of the class, was president of the sorority, had dated the captain of the football team, and it was a very small, Charlottesville High School was very small, and everybody knew one another, and so it was, there weren't a lot of cliques. And to be honest, my goal was to go to college and graduate, but I never spent any time thinking about the fact that that meant leaving home. So it was hard. I think I cried the first 3 weeks every day. It just, the first week was horrible. The second week was better. Fortunately, I had a wonderful roommate. And so I was very, very much, because I hadn't mentally prepared for leaving home, really felt like a fish out of water. So my first day there was with trepidation, but Cheryl and I had contacted one another through the summer, and we knew what our, we coordinated our curtains and our bedspreads, and, you're going to bring this and I'll bring that type of thing. And so get there, and basically, and we were in Mary Branch North. We actually were both assigned other roommates, and then in the summer they made the switch so that we were together. Well, we get there, and it was Mary Branch North, and the room faced the fountain, which was wonderful. The fountain was very soothing, and to this day I need noise to go to sleep. But it was the converted closet, housekeeping closet for the dormitory. So it was a small space, but we made do. And I did get a new bike to take to college. So Cheryl, my roommate, really liked bicycle riding, and so she would. Okay, Noanie, come on, we've got to go. Let's go for a ride. You're going to feel better. And I would go home just about every weekend. And then finally, in October at some point, my mother drove me back, and she said, Noanie, you just have to adapt. And she said, you can't come home again until Thanksgiving. So now you have to keep in mind that back in 1972, we were still, long distance calls were a big thing. And there was no technology. People didn't walk around with cell phones or iPads or computers, personal computers. In fact, you were probably pretty wealthy if you came to school with a calculator. And so when she said you're not coming home till Thanksgiving, that pretty much meant you better make your life here and understand that. So, okay. So that was my introduction. So it was kind of tough, but in the fall semester, there weren't organizations the way there are today, and they hadn't gotten anything off the ground for women in particular. And so at 4 o'clock every day, we used to have tea in our room. And so the other women in the dorm would come in, or friends that we'd made through our other classes would come in, and we'd have tea and, something to snack on. And so I got to meet people that way. And then they hired Rachel Anderson, Coach Anderson, for the women's physical education program. And I went to that PE class and still like feeling, what have I done coming here? And oh my gosh, I was so homesick. I went to the first PE class and I thought, I have got to find a way out of this. And so she started a tennis team in my second semester. Or it may have been there. It may have been there in the fall semester, but I don't know. I joined the tennis team, and so I made friends that way, and it put structure in my life. That going to classes full time, and then I worked 20 hours a week on the campus.
So what work did you do when you were on campus?
I worked for the what was it called? Financial aid and career placement or something like that was the name of the office. Okay. So
you just did kind of the desk stuff, I guess.
Right. Basically, there was a director, and he had a secretary, Mrs. Buchanan, and so secretarial work basically, and then if people I did that all 4 years, and so providing information once they people would come in and they'd want to sign up for interviews and that kind of thing.
So what was the PE class that you took? What kind of class was it? Do you remember?
You had to take physical education.
What does that mean? Was it a particular class? Was it like a weightlifting class or?
No, just general physical education. I think they probably, just like you would probably have in high school or something. Oh. I'm not really sure. I just knew I had to go to the tennis team.
Well, to get out of the classes?
Yeah.
Was it?
Well, see, the thing was that class, the one that I was placed into, it must have been in the fall, because you had to take it, and the classes were already organized or something. I don't know. Anyway, I didn't want to take a shower in the middle of the day and have to do my hair and makeup again. And so I guess that's when I heard about the tennis team, and I thought, yeah, I definitely want to join that. So if you did the tennis, you didn't have to do the physical education class.
Were there just girls in the physical
Yes.
education?
Mm-hmm. Just girl. It was, but for me, it was just going to be a hassle. I'm a morning person. I get up early and get set for the day and head off to either work or classes, and that's kind of the way life ran there.
Had you ever played tennis before you joined the team?
Just casually, not on a team, but the wonderful thing was they passed Title IX, and so the colleges had to start providing some comparable sports programs for women, and that was the only one there was at that point in time. Well, I don't think there was anything, actually all 4 years, I don't think there was anything else. I don't know what it was. I think there might have been an intramural program.
Yeah, the basketball team might have came right after you were 77.
Maybe so. Okay.
Yeah. So this is kind of off topic, but what was the food like while you were there? Where did you eat? What did you do?
I'm trying to think what the name of the dining hall was. The building is still there because I drove through there on the way to Richmond one day not too long ago to see how the campus had grown. And so there was a dining hall, and you lined up, and it was cafeteria style. You take your tray, and I thought the food was good. I know that before I came, and I'm not sure whether it was the year before or 2 years before, there had actually been a food riot in there. But when I came, I know it was under new management, and the food was good.
Did you think the lunchroom, was there anything special about? I mean, it's a space, where people can come and you hang out and stuff like that. Did it feel like a center of,
Not at all.
You don't think so?
No.
Okay.
No, I think it was for the fraternities.
Mm-hmm.
You could see that, but by the time I finished tennis practice and got over there for dinner, probably most of the campus had already eaten and left, so maybe I didn't see what other people saw.
So while you were on campus, you played tennis, and then I guess you had your tea club, I guess.
Well, it wasn't a club. It's just that it was a way initially for us to. The dorm that I was living in was Mary Branch, and yes, there were other freshman women there, but you also had all of the sophomore women. So there were like 50, I guess. And I don't know that all 50 lived there, but because New Dorm, I think, opened up our year in 72. But a lot of the first year cohort lived there. So it was a way of getting to meet them and understanding a little more about the campus and life there and classes and who the professors are and all this kind of good stuff.
So you don't think there was a divide between the first year girls and the second year girls or anything like that?
Not really. I can see how I think from the standpoint that you didn't have girls' clubs on campus, there was a lot of segregation that way. For instance, I hardly knew any of the girls that lived in the motel dorms. They were called at the time. I don't know what they're called today, but
The freshman village.
Okay. It sounds so much nicer. But I didn't know them. I knew the ones that were in my classes in my major, but if they weren't in Mary Branch, I didn't know them all that well until I got to junior year, when most of your classes are centered around your major. So
it seems like, I guess, most of the social life in general was kind of around your dorm, in a sense. I mean, that was kind of the rallying point. You know what I mean?
Well, you mean for women?
Yeah.
The social life was really built around the fraternities at that point in time. But, I mean, you got to know the women that lived in your dorm somewhat. Mm-hmm. Not a whole lot if they weren't in your classes. So.
Did you? What do you mean the social life was around the fraternities? Well,
they had the parties. So basically on the weekends you went around to the different fraternities and visited with people in those fraternities. So I ended up dating a KA for, I guess, 3 years, and then he was transferred. His parents transferred him to another school, but and then I knew Kappa Sig House was next to that, and I can't even remember Oh, I know how I knew them because of guys from Charlottesville from high school that had come to Randolph-Macon. So they gravitated toward that fraternity, and so they used to come around and get me and take me over there, that kind of thing. I'd take my roommate, and so I met people that way. And I think that probably for the most part, a lot of people did it that way. You know, somebody from your high school comes by and gets you and takes you over there. I'm not a date, but just, you know, to introduce you to people, that kind of thing.
So I guess the girls wouldn't approach the fraternity by themselves. It's not something that you just...
I'm sure they did. I'm sure they did. And I think my roommate and I went to, because she knew people in another, from her hometown, she knew people in a couple of other fraternities. So, you know, there were times that we would go together there, especially early on. But like I said, I started dating a guy that played tennis, and so I tended to stay up near the KA house and got to know them and their girlfriends, who basically didn't live on campus.
Oh. So were you a little sister, okay, or did you just date one?
I'm sorry,
Were you a little sister? Or
no, in the KA house, one steady girlfriend is usually named back then anyway, was named the little sister, and she didn't go to Randolph-Macon, but I don't know. I'm not sure what you're asking.
Well, I mean, a lot of the fraternities, and if you look back in the yearbooks too, there's always pictures of, you know, the little sisters. I guess the fraternities it was kind of like a sorority in a sense, but, you know, they were just attached to the fraternities. So we've interviewed a couple women who have been little sisters. So I guess they weren't really members of the fraternity, but they were close as you can get without, you know, being a male member. So
come to think of it, I think one of the people, I'm remembering the girl who didn't go to Randolph-Macon. I can't remember what school she went to. In fact, she and Mike got married. Debbie was her name. But actually, now that you mention it, I think that the president of KA, when I was a freshman, I think his girlfriend might have been the little sister. Hadn't really thought about it. Don't know what role they play. Never had a sense of what that meant.
Yeah, exactly. So, you mentioned that, you know, one of the guys had a girlfriend from somewhere else. Was that often the case?
Let me tell you something. I thought I would die the first time I went to, I don't know what house it was, but there was a big party at this fraternity house, and this U-Haul pulls up, and they open up the back doors, and all these women from Mary Wash get out. And and they come in through the center of the room, and, you know, people have basically split on both sides. And I was like, oh my gosh, who on earth would do this? So, yeah, it was kind of shocking. But that's the way it had always been because of all these male schools in Virginia. It was, you know, these guys all wanted dates. And so they used to hire or rent vans or whatever, and bring the girls to the campuses, or they'd do road trips. But, you know, that's a little more dangerous because everybody gets in their car, packed car, and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So,
I mean, how do you think that make the women feel? I mean, how did that make you feel when, you know, all of these women just being imported in?
I just was shocked. I was never interested in going to a women's college, and there were quite a number that were, and I think still are, very well respected academically. But I didn't see myself going to a girls' school, so I never even looked into it. And of course, once I was there and realized, there are all these guys and there's so few women, relatively speaking. So after getting over the shock, it was like, well, of course they have to do something, and I guess that was their answer. But they actually stopped doing that. I think it had always been that way, and once, I'm not sure I even saw that after freshman year, to be honest. It was pretty shocking freshman year.
So just that idea of, there's outside girls and there's the girls at Randolph-Macon. Do you remember anything about homecoming and people, were like to be homecoming queen, and some were, off-campus girls and some were on-campus girls. Do you remember anything about that, or remember that being a big deal?
I know that homecoming queen is always a big deal, but the only one I remember lived in my dorm. So, and I remember she had to go to the Cherry Blossom Festival, and it was a lousy weekend in D.C., and I thought, oh, poor thing. So, no, I didn't know that they had off-campus girls there.
Yeah, it might have just have been in 72, but it was an article in the Yellow Jacket, so that's why I asked the women if it was. But do you remember the other big events? But do you remember homecomings? Were they a pretty big deal when you went to?
Not for me.
Yeah, I guess it's more for the alumni and everything. But do you remember Hampton-Sydney, the games?
Yes, I do. I went to those.
What were those like?
Lots of rivalry, lots of, basically a really great reason to get excited about something besides school, and just rivalry, and look for a fun afternoon and evening, so they were big deals, very big deals.
Do you remember Camptown races?
Yes. I do still remember them.
What were those like too? Sorry to keep asking.
Fortunately, the times I went, it was always beautiful weather. Virginia's so pretty, and so, everybody, you piled in a car with your friends and took a blanket and a cooler, and it was just a really good time, very relaxing, mentally gave you a break, and so they were big deals. They were fun.
And there was racing when you were there, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
why was there not?
Oh, well, I think soon after they quit the races, and they would just have parties.
Oh,
on
really?
Campus. They would bring bluegrass bands and stuff on campus.
Oh.
So it's just trying to find that line, where there's.
No.
See, yeah, and I mean they stopped doing it altogether. Like I had never heard of it before this project, so just the idea of Camptown. So, but I think it's pretty interesting. So you mentioned that you live with Cheryl Grafuri, right? So that was your freshman roommate. Mm-hmm. I guess
Cheryl Woolfolk.
Okay, she was Cheryl Woolfolk back in the day. So I guess she was your roommate just for freshman year, or did you get along? I guess you said she was a great roommate.
She's still a very close friend, and we lived together 3 out of the 4 years. Third year, she suggested, why don't we get different roommates, and I said fine, I went and lived in New Dorm and with Debbie Smith, who was a year ahead of me. And let's see, the nice thing about that was air conditioning. But you know, the dorm itself didn't have the same feel that Mary Branch did. So second semester I went to back to Mary Branch and took potluck. That was an interesting experience. So there was a girl that had transferred in, and we got the corner room in the middle part. So it looked over the quad. But yeah, she was a little different, and that was, so Cheryl and I got back, decided to room together again the final year, so. So what was fun, what was interesting about Cheryl and I at exam time, well, a couple of things about exam time. The way the grades played out was, in my area, was basically you had a midterm, a big paper, and a final. And the paper was usually due either a week or two before the final exam. So basically you had 3 grades. And but after my freshman year, my mother moved back to Missouri, where I was born, and my parents' families were still back there. And I never seemed to quite have enough money to pay the bus fare home. So, you know, one year my brother, who was at UVA, arranged for me to catch a ride with a couple of his fraternity brothers. So I did that, and as far as St. Louis, and got a bus down to Springfield. And then another year I rode with a friend who was in the poli-sci classes, and that's basically how I knew him. And but 2 years I had to come up with the money, so I would have to type people's papers at exam time. I had to type my own paper. Well, I had to get mine done early. I had to type their papers, so they paid me for it, and then I had to do what I could to pass the exams. Yeah. And so it was always a challenge, so that's my big memory about that, but I forgot what your question is.
Just kind of your roommate situation. So I think you.
Oh, so the other thing that always happened at exam time was we always changed the furniture around. We moved the beds, we moved the bookshelves, we moved the desks, and then we sat down and we did our studying for the exams. And it was like, okay, we just need a new perspective on things. So it seemed like we always moved the furniture at exam time. So those are my 2 recollections about exams.
What did you think about the visitation policies while you were there? So.
Let's see. You had to have a card key to get in. We had a house mother, a wonderful, wonderful woman, Mrs. Shackelford. And in fact, one year she turned 75, and she had a suite in Mary Branch on the first floor. And we gave her a party, and everybody dressed up in long dresses and invited, you know, friends and so forth. And so that was fun. But and she would always have coffee for us. So Cheryl and I used to go down there and get coffee and chat with her. And she basically kept tabs. I mean, she may have been in her 70s, but she knew who was coming and going. And if you didn't have your card key, then you had to ring. I think you rang something, or you banged on the door, you know, and you just didn't want to do that to her. Visitation, I think boys weren't allowed in after a certain hour or something like that. As the years went on, nobody really cared about that rule so much, I think is what you could say.
Switching over to academics now. So, what was your major?
Political science.
Oh, you had mentioned that before, yeah. And did you start out wanting to be a political science major?
Yes, because my goal was to go to law school, and that had one of the best pre-law programs in the state. So I had looked into that before I went, and
so pre-law would just be taking certain classes, I guess.
yeah,
So.
there was, my advisor was Mr. Kuntz, and they basically told you what you had to have in order to graduate, with a degree in that area. And, when you sat down and you had your meeting, first off, it's like, what do you want to do, Miss Busch? Well, graduate and go to law school. But,
So what were the classes that you felt were, that really stood out among the rest?
well, one thing I found when I got to Macon was that time management, I never really had a problem with time management skills, but I hadn't worked 20 hours a week with a full load either. And so that freshman year was particularly difficult because there was so much more work in the social sciences. And I remember, a couple of things. French class, in my freshman year, they placed me in senior French, 20th century literature, French literature. And one day I was looking around the class, and so there were all these seniors in it, and the professor had some serious problems. And but there was a girl from Charlottesville who had been in my French classes, and one day I'm looking around, I said to her, Debbie, why did they place me in this class? I couldn't figure it out. And she said, well, Noanie, you must have done really well on that test that Mrs. Towler gave us, just before the end of school, in high school. And I was like, I didn't know any, just, okay, yeah. You want me to take a test? Fine, I'll take a test. And so my first college midterm was French. And I had so psyched myself out. I went to the class with my little blue book and pen, and we get the exam, and then the professor leaves, and I could not remember one word of French. I could not remember how to say bonjour. It was that bad. I had so psyched myself out. So my next exam was history, midterm. And I flat out I miscalculated how long it would take me to get through the material. So there were 3 books we were supposed to read for the midterm, and I read the first 2, but I didn't even get to the third one. I did not even know what the title of it was when I walked into the midterm. And this was a history class. And took the exam, knew I didn't get anything on that one. No way to baloney that one through. And so when the professor went to handed back these tests, he went on a rant for, it seemed like forever, for like 10 minutes, about how if you didn't do well on this exam, it's because you didn't think. And he went on and on about that. And of course, the whole time I'm sitting there going, no, the reason I didn't do well is because I didn't read a third of the material. And so, he said, he asked me to stay after class, and so I did, and everybody had left, and he said, so I said, he's staring at me. I said, so Dr. So-and-so, are you going to teach me how to think? And he says, why, yes, Miss Busch. I think the housewife today needs to know how to think. And we're going to do that in this class. Well, there was another guy that was coming back, and he had aced it. David was his name. And he heard this, and, I said, well, thank you very much. And, I told him, I said I flat out didn't read the third book. Don't even know the title of it. Didn't have time. And David said, Noanie, I will walk over to the dean of students right this minute with you. He said, he can't talk to you that way. Because, of course, the presumption was that I was only there to get married, find a husband and get married. That obviously that's what I wanted to do in life. Or why would I have come to an all-male college? So that was probably the first time it hit me in the face that, oh, this is an all-male bastion that economically needed to accept women. And there are some hurdles with that. So,
were there any professors that you felt were really influential in your experience?
Yes, Mr. Kuntz and Dr. Unger and Mr. Sullivan were my political science professors, and I have to admit they were really, really good, and I learned so much, and I learned so much about, if you want to get right down to it, how to think, and how to think critically. And when Mr. Kuntz died, I don't know if I got a phone call from the college or a letter or something, but they were asking if you'd like to make a donation. And so I sent a check in because I read, I think it was in the next Randolph-Macon newsletter or whatever, bulletin, don't they call it that? A quote from him before he died, and he said, that first cohort of women that came through here really had it hard. And I thought, you get my check. But it was also very interesting. Dr. Unger, and I don't remember which class it was, whether it was international organization or international relations. I can't remember which one now, but he introduced the concept of triangular multipolarity. And what was really neat was that George Busch was the speaker at our graduation. And of course, in 1972 we had the open door with China, and And so George Bush's speech at our graduation was all about that. So that was really kind of a neat thing as a capstone to that degree.
Yeah. So, what did you do after you graduated?
I went to Charlottesville and got a job with UVA at the Darden School, and basically looked for a job up on Capitol Hill. And so my plan was to go there and go to night school at Georgetown. And then I met my husband, and life changed. So I ended up postponing those plans. And after he graduated, from the Darden School, we moved up here, and I got a job with, at that time, this was like just before the real computer revolution, so to speak, a company that manufactured microprocessors. And so I wrote special applications and took some programming courses in grad school, and then really loved technology, and so did that. And then my husband was transferred up to New Jersey, so we lived up there for 6 years, and I had my children. And then when they hit high school, I said, well, it's time to get back to work. And so I went and got a master's at GMU in '94 in curriculum and instruction, and got a job with a company that the company was a wholly owned subsidiary of a manufacturer in Israel of computer interfaced training systems in the sciences, so electronics and telecommunications and physics and all this kind of stuff. So did that for about 7 years, and then saw the writing on the wall for, actually had a call from the Army asking me if the courseware that went with the trainers, with the hardware, whether that was web-based, and it wasn't. And the whole industry in the 90s was turning toward e-learning as a more economical model for training. So I went back to school and got a second master's in instructional technology. And so now I'm, kind of made my way up that chain, and I'm a performance solutions architect now. So it can be any type of performance support tool. It could be a widget, it could be a wiki, it could be a mobile app, it could be e-learning courseware. I've done a lot of military and federal agency courseware. So that's where I am today.
Yeah, it's a little different from political science, but
It is, but you know what? It's because of that political science that I am, I've been very successful in my career, because you get in there, you get a lot of complex material that you need to be able to distill and understand and synthesize and evaluate, and you had to do that rather rapidly with a lot of content at Macon. You were dealing with, it was never, one little textbook. It was massive things and massive research papers. And back then, of course, we didn't have the internet for research. You were sitting in fact, there's a picture of me in one of the annuals, sitting all by myself in the library doing research for a paper that was due. So, it was a lot harder then, and you didn't have word processing, so you made a mistake with figuring out where your footnotes were going to be, and oh my gosh, I got to retype the whole paper. I miscalculated. Oh, it was a pain. Yeah. Papers had to be typed, of course, and so life is a lot different now, fortunately. But it's really because of that, how they taught you to think critically, that the ability to transfer those skills to any area you want to go into is what really matters. And that's what they taught you.
So how have you stayed in contact with the college since you graduated?
Really, just I love the fact that the newsletter's online, and I still have a few friends that I keep in touch with, so I hear from them, and of course Cheryl lives up here, so we get together, and that's about it.
It's kind of a hypothetical question, but if there were an entering freshman today who was entering college at Randolph-Macon, what advice would you give them, based on your experience and after what you've done afterwards as well? So what advice would you give to that freshman?
I think I read somewhere that Macon has a lot of support for the students now, and I think that was definitely lacking when I went there. And if it was there, it was not well publicized. So I would say if they're coming from a high school where they were a star and they're coming into Macon and they feel like they've just been hammered with work, take advantage of the resources that are there, because I think, and I'm seeing this with people that I manage at work. There are a lot of people that think they manage their time well, that really don't. And like I said, it really hit me in the face freshman for fall semester. It was really hard, and so it was a tough climb up. So I'd say get the resources and the help that you need, because you're not there. There's nothing good about not working to your potential because you're lacking a skill, and some high schools are, I don't know, more rigorous than others. I knew, sitting in my English classes and history and political science, that there were a lot of people that had been exposed to a lot more in high school than I had. And I just worked really hard to try to close that gap.
Yeah, that's great advice. Is there anything that you feel like we might have not have touched on that you feel is an important part of your experience, or that you would like to share? I think this school is so much stronger today because they have organized activities that, like I said, life revolved around
the fraternities. We didn't go into Richmond, for example, to go partying. I think we went one time. It wasn't very much fun, to be honest. But I think the campus has grown more to integrate women, offer them more opportunities, and I think that makes a more cohesive campus experience. So it's not, I had a good experience. I got a great education, but there weren't things to bring women together. Like I said, there was that one tennis team. Well, there were only 6 of us on it. I think there were only 3 courts available, something like that. So, that makes a huge difference for getting people together. So who are my friends today from that period of time? They're people I lived with. And there was nothing to bring us together. If you weren't in the same area, political science or whatever, there really wasn't a lot to bring you together with. Like most of the girls lived, what do you call it now, the freshman village? Yeah. I think most of them lived down there. There must have been, I guess there were a lot in New Dorm too, but that didn't really have the, what I found when I lived there one semester is that it was like living in a hotel. There wasn't like a gathering place like you have in Mary Branch. That just, I don't know, was a different feel. Don't know what it is today.
Yeah. Makes sense. All right. Well, that's all the questions I have. So thanks for your time.
Okay. Glad you're doing it.